Two officers follow a dog into the dark and make a horrifying discovery. The rain had been falling all evening, turning the streets into glistening rivers under the dim glow of the streetlights. The small town of Willow Creek was usually quiet after dark, with most shops closing early and only the occasional car passing by. The local police station, a modest brick building on the edge of Main Street, was wrapping up another uneventful night. Inside the station, Officer Daniel Carter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He had been on the force for nearly 15 years, and if there was one thing he had learned, it was that Willow Creek wasn't exactly a hotspot for crime. The most excitement they had on an average day was a shoplifter at the corner store or a neighbor's complaint about a barking dog. He glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. Across from him, Emily Rhodes, a rookie officer, was hunched over her desk, filling out paperwork. Unlike Daniel, she still had the energy of a new recruit, ambitious, eager, and full of hope. Daniel admired her drive, but also knew she had a lot to learn about how dull police work could really be. "Almost done for the night?" Daniel asked, stretching his arms. Emily sighed. "Almost. Just finishing up this report about the stolen bicycle from earlier." She tapped her pen against the desk. "I thought police work would be more exciting, you know." Daniel chuckled. "Trust me, kid. Boring is good. The moment things get exciting, it usually means trouble." As if on cue, a sharp scratching sound echoed from the front entrance. Both officers turned toward the glass door. A small, shadowy figure stood outside, its wet fur clinging to its thin frame. "A dog?" Emily frowned, standing up. Daniel squinted. The dog was a mix of black and brown, its fur matted with mud. It looked thin, like it hadn't eaten properly in days. But what struck Daniel wasn't just its condition, it was its eyes. Deep, dark, and full of urgency. The dog barked, its front paws scratching against the glass. It wasn't the usual bark of a stray looking for food or shelter. It was desperate. "What's with him?" Emily asked, walking toward the door. Daniel stood up beside her. "I don't know, but he sure looks like he's trying to tell us something." Emily slowly pushed open the door. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet pavement. The dog took a step back, then barked again, its tail stiff. It looked at them, then turned its head toward the empty street before looking back, as if urging them to follow. "That's weird," Emily murmured. Daniel crossed his arms. "I've seen lost dogs before, but this one, he's not lost. He knows where he's going." The dog barked again, more insistent this time. It turned, took a few steps down the street, then stopped and looked back. "He wants us to follow," Emily whispered, her eyes wide. Daniel hesitated. Following a stray dog in the middle of the night? It sounded ridiculous, but something about the way the dog acted made his gut twist. "What if someone's in trouble?" Emily said, voicing what he was thinking. Daniel exhaled. "All right, but if this is just some wild goose chase, you owe me coffee tomorrow morning." Emily grinned. "Deal!" They stepped out onto the sidewalk, locking the station door behind them. The dog wagged its tail once, then took off at a steady pace, leading them down the street. The town was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the distant dripping of rain from rooftops and their boots splashing against the wet pavement. "Where do you think he's taking us?" Emily asked, glancing at Daniel. "No idea," he admitted, "but I have a bad feeling about this." The dog led them through the empty streets, past closed shops and darkened houses. The deeper they went, the quieter the town seemed. The warm glow of streetlights faded behind them, replaced by the harsh flicker of an old lamppost on the outskirts of town. Daniel's hand instinctively went to his gun holster. They were heading toward the abandoned part of town, the old mill district. "Wait," Emily said, slowing her pace. "This area, no one comes here anymore. Why would the dog be leading us here?" Daniel didn't answer. The dog stopped at the entrance of a narrow alley, its ears pricked up, its whole body tense. A low whine escaped its throat. Daniel and Emily exchanged glances. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Daniel asked. Emily nodded. "Something's wrong." The dog took a hesitant step forward, then turned to them, waiting. Daniel tightened his grip on his flashlight and stepped into the alley first, Emily right behind him. The further they walked, the worse the air smelled. Damp, rotting, with a hint of something Daniel couldn't quite place. The dog suddenly stopped. Its body stiffened. A deep, throaty growl rumbled from its chest. Daniel shone his flashlight ahead. At first, all he saw were broken crates and discarded trash. But then, a door. An old wooden door, barely hanging onto its rusted hinges. The dog whined, pawing at it. Emily swallowed. "Daniel, I think we found something." Daniel stepped forward, reaching out to touch the door. The wood was damp and soft under his fingers. "Help me open it," he said. Emily nodded, and together, they pushed. The door groaned in protest before slowly creaking open. The smell hit them first. Rot, decay, something foul and unnatural. Emily gagged, covering her nose. "Oh my God!" Daniel aimed his flashlight inside. What he saw made his stomach drop. A room, dark and cluttered. The walls covered in strange markings, papers scattered across the floor. And in the middle, a small shoe, a child's shoe. Daniel's pulse quickened. The dog stepped forward, its tail low, ears flattened. It let out a low whimper. Emily grabbed Daniel's arm. "Daniel, someone's been here, and I don't think we're alone." Daniel's instincts screamed at him. They had just walked into something much bigger than they had expected, and now there was no turning back.
For a moment, neither Daniel nor Emily moved. The dim beam of Daniel's flashlight flickered slightly as he steadied his hand. His gut twisted, every nerve in his body on high alert. The air inside the abandoned building was thick, heavy with the scent of rot and something else, something metallic. Emily took a step closer to him. That shoe, it's small, maybe for a 5 or 6-year-old. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the weight of her words sank deep. Daniel crouched down, carefully picking up the tiny pink sneaker. Dirt caked the sides, and the laces were frayed. His jaw tightened. This doesn't belong here. A low whine broke the silence. The dog, standing near the entrance, had its ears flattened against its head. It didn't bark. It just stared at something further inside the room, its dark eyes wide and uneasy. Daniel and Emily exchanged glances. The dog had led them here for a reason, and they both knew they couldn't ignore it. Emily swallowed hard. "Should we call backup?" Daniel exhaled. "We don't even know what we're dealing with yet." He looked around the room, his flashlight sweeping over old rusted furniture, shattered glass, and the strange markings on the walls, symbols that looked hastily drawn, smeared as if someone had been in a hurry. "Let's search a little more. If we find something bigger, we'll radio in." Emily nodded hesitantly, pulling out her own flashlight. The dog whined again, but didn't follow them as they stepped further inside. The deeper they went, the worse the air smelled. Emily pulled her sleeve over her nose. "It smells like something died in here." Daniel's flashlight flickered over a pile of blankets in the corner. He took slow, cautious steps toward it. The shape was small, unmoving. A lump formed in his throat. "God, please don't let it be what I think it is." Emily stood behind him, her hands clenched into fists. Daniel reached forward and pulled the blanket back. Empty. A sigh of relief escaped Emily, but it was short-lived. Underneath the blankets were scattered papers, some torn, others stained. They were official-looking, with names, addresses, and photos. Daniel picked one up and froze. It was a missing persons report. Emily grabbed another paper, her hands shaking slightly. The photograph was of a little boy no older than 7. His name was printed underneath. Lucas Ramirez, missing for 2 months. More papers, more names, more children. Emily's voice trembled. "Daniel, these are all missing kids." Daniel's heart pounded. He flipped through the reports, recognizing cases he had seen before but had never been solved. The realization hit him like a brick. Whoever had been using this place had been keeping track of the missing children. He turned to Emily. "This isn't just some abandoned building. Someone's been using this place. Recently." A sound made them both freeze. Creak from somewhere deeper inside. Daniel reached for his gun. Emily did the same, her breathing quick and shallow. The dog let out a low, guttural growl, its body tense as it stared toward a half-open doorway at the far end of the room. Someone was there, watching them. Daniel motioned for Emily to stay behind him as he slowly approached the door. He reached out, pushing it open just an inch wider. The hinges groaned. Darkness. A cold breeze rushed through, carrying a faint, rotting smell. And then, footsteps. Daniel spun around, gun raised. "Who's there?" Silence. Emily backed up slightly, her grip on her gun unsteady. "Daniel, I don't like this." Neither did he. The feeling in his gut only grew worse. He took a careful step inside the next room. It was small, barely big enough to be a storage space. But something was off. His flashlight swept over the walls, the floor, the piles of discarded objects. And then he saw it. A trapdoor in the floor, slightly open. Daniel's breath hitched. Someone had been down there. Maybe still was. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel, I think this place was used for more than just storage." Daniel knelt down, his fingers brushing the wooden handle. He hesitated. If he opened this, they might uncover something they weren't ready for. The dog, standing at the entrance of the room, let out a soft whimper. It wasn't just leading them, it was warning them. Daniel took a deep breath. "Ready?" Emily nodded, gripping her gun. Daniel yanked the trapdoor open. A swathe of putrid air hit them, making Emily gag. His flashlight beamed into the dark underground space. The walls were damp, lined with old bricks. There were chains on the floor, some broken, some still locked. A small cot sat against the far wall, along with empty food containers. Emily swallowed hard. Oh my God, someone was being kept down here. Daniel felt sick. The reports, the missing kids, the chains, it all connected. Someone had been holding people here. But where were they now? A sudden bang from outside sent both of them into fight mode. Daniel grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. We need immediate backup at 41 Belmont Street. Possible crime scene involving missing persons." Emily stood near the window, peeking out. Her face went pale. "Daniel, someone's out there." Daniel's hand tightened around his gun. "How many?" She swallowed. "I saw a shadow, someone moving near the alley." Daniel stepped toward the door. His instinct screamed trap. The dog suddenly growled, baring its teeth. And then a loud knock at the front door. Emily nearly jumped. Daniel's pulse raced. Who knocks at an abandoned house? He raised his gun. Who's there? Silence. Another knock, louder this time. Daniel stepped forward, gun aimed. "Identify yourself." Still nothing. He exchanged a glance with Emily. Every instinct told him this wasn't right. The dog let out a sharp bark, then lunged toward the door, scratching at it wildly. Daniel hesitated, and in that moment, the door burst open. A man in dark clothing rushed inside, a gun in his hand. Emily screamed. Daniel barely had time to react before the man fired a single shot, and the dog jumped in front of them. The gunshot echoed through the abandoned house like a crack of thunder. Daniel's heart stopped as he saw the dog jerk backward, a sharp yelp tearing through the air. "No!" Emily cried. The dog collapsed onto the dusty floor, whimpering, but there was no time to react. The gunman, dressed in black, lunged forward, his weapon still raised, his face hidden by the shadows of his hood. Daniel barely had time to dive to the side as another shot rang out, the bullet shattering a wooden beam behind him. Emily had her gun up, her hands shaking. "Drop your weapon," she screamed. The man hesitated, but it was enough. Daniel launched himself forward, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it. The gun clattered to the ground. The man grunted in pain, trying to pull away, but Daniel slammed him against the nearest wall. Emily kicked the gun out of reach and aimed her weapon at the attacker. "Stay down," she ordered, her voice trembling but firm. The man stopped struggling. His heavy breathing echoed in the silence. Daniel pressed him harder against the wall, his adrenaline surging. "Who are you? What the hell were you doing here?" The man laughed, a deep, raspy sound. "You have no idea what you just got yourselves into," he muttered. Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel. This wasn't just some random criminal. This was bigger. Daniel pushed harder. "What's in this house? What were you hiding?" The man just smirked. "You're too late." Before Daniel could react, the man suddenly jerked his knee upward, hitting Daniel in the stomach. The air rushed out of his lungs and he stumbled back. In a flash, the man whipped around, knocking Emily's gun from her hands. "Emily!" Daniel gasped, still catching his breath. But before the man could run, the dog Bleeding, limping, but alive, it leaped forward, sinking its teeth into the man's arm. He screamed, thrashing, trying to shake the dog off, but the animal held on. Emily grabbed her gun from the floor, breathing heavily. "Let go!" she shouted at the attacker. The man staggered, trying to free himself, but the dog refused to let go. Finally, he collapsed, his body hitting the floor hard. The dog released him, stepping back weakly, panting. Blood dripped from its shoulder where the bullet had grazed it. Daniel immediately grabbed his cuffs and restrained the man's hands behind his back. "You're under arrest," he muttered, his voice shaking. Emily knelt beside the dog, her hands hovering over its side. "Daniel, we need to get him to a vet. He's hurt bad." Daniel looked down at the animal. Even in pain, it stared at him, loyal, determined, as if to say, "We're not done yet." But before Daniel could respond, something caught his attention. A beeping sound. His eyes snapped toward the trapdoor they had opened earlier. A small red light was blinking inside the underground space. "Emily, do you hear that?" She looked up, her face pale. Daniel's mind raced. It could be an alarm, a warning signal, or worse, a bomb. "Get out!" he shouted. Emily grabbed the dog into her arms, ignoring its weight, and ran toward the exit. Daniel dragged the handcuffed man, who struggled, but Daniel wasn't letting him go. They burst out of the house just as the explosion sent a shockwave through the air, throwing them to the ground. Daniel hit the pavement hard, his ears ringing. Dust and debris rained down around them. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, Emily's coughing broke through. Daniel forced himself to sit up, his vision blurry. The house was now a smoking wreck, flames licking at the remains. Emily sat beside the dog, shielding it with her body. Daniel turned toward the man, still handcuffed, lying unconscious. Emily looked at him, her face streaked with dust. What the hell just happened?" Daniel wiped sweat and dirt from his brow. Someone wanted this place destroyed. 15 minutes later, police sirens sliced through the night, red and blue lights flashing across the wreckage. Firefighters worked to put out the flames, while medics checked over Emily and the injured dog. Daniel stood near the back of an ambulance, watching as the suspect was loaded into a squad car. Emily walked up beside him. "The vet said the dog will be okay. The bullet just grazed him." Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Good." Emily hesitated. "Daniel, that explosion wasn't random. Someone set it off, which means..." Daniel nodded. "There's someone else involved." The man in the squad car grinned at them through the window, as if he knew something they didn't. Daniel clenched his fists. This wasn't over. Not even close. The squad car's red and blue lights flickered across Daniel's face as he watched the suspect sitting in the back seat, his wrists bound in handcuffs. Despite the bruises on his face and the pain from the dog's bite, the man smirked. It made Daniel's blood boil. They had just survived an explosion. They had found missing children's reports inside that house. And yet, the man before them sat there, acting like he had already won. Daniel clenched his fists. "What are you smiling at?" he muttered under his breath. The man chuckled. "You think you stopped something?" His voice was low, almost mocking. "You're just scratching the surface." Daniel's gut twisted. He wanted to press for answers, but before he could, Chief Howard, a tall, grey-haired man with sharp eyes, approached. "Carter Rhodes," the chief said, his voice heavy. "Step aside." Emily glanced at Daniel before they both moved away from the squad car. Chief Howard crossed his arms. "What the hell happened out here?" Daniel exhaled. "We followed a lead." "A dog led you here," the chief interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Emily nodded. "And that lead turned out to be real. The house had evidence. Missing children reports, chains in the basement." "And then it blew up," the chief cut in. "Just by coincidence?" Daniel stiffened. "No, sir. Someone wanted to erase what was in there." The chief rubbed his face tiredly. "This whole thing is a mess. We're talking about missing kids and now a possible criminal ring operating under our noses." He looked back at the squad car, his expression unreadable. "Did he say anything?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure how much he trusted the chief. Emily, however, spoke up. "He said we're only scratching the surface." Chief Howard's jaw tightened. He nodded slightly, then turned to the other officers. "Get him back to the station. Maximum security." The squad car drove off. Daniel watched it disappear down the road, his instincts screaming that this wasn't over. Emily stood beside him, arms crossed. He was too calm, she murmured. Daniel nodded. He's not scared. He turned to her. Which means someone else is still out there. Emily swallowed hard. What do we do? Daniel's eyes shifted to the dog, now sitting near an ambulance, getting bandaged up by a medic. The same dog that had led them here. The same dog that had risked its life for them. And suddenly, Daniel realized something. This wasn't a stray dog randomly showing up at the station. This dog knew something. He knelt beside the animal, gently stroking its head. "You're not just leading us to random places, are you?" he murmured. The dog licked his hand, but then whined, ears flicking toward the street. Daniel followed its gaze. A car had just pulled up across the road. Black, tinted windows. It didn't belong to the police. Emily tensed. "Daniel!" The back door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. He was older, with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes. Daniel had never seen him before, but something about him felt wrong. The man's lips curled into a polite but empty smile. "Good evening, officers." His voice was smooth, controlled. "I heard there was some excitement tonight." Daniel slowly stood up, shielding the dog slightly with his leg. "And you are?" The man chuckled. "Oh, where are my manners? My name is Vincent Cole." He reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, before pulling out a golden badge. "FBI." Emily's eyebrows shot up. "The FBI?" Vincent gave them a calm, unreadable look. "Let's just say I represent some higher authorities that have been monitoring this situation." Daniel didn't buy it. "You're telling me the FBI's been watching this? And didn't step in?" Vincent smirked. "We like to observe before we act." Daniel clenched his jaw. "And what exactly are you here for now?" Vincent's eyes flicked to the dog. "I want the animal." Daniel and Emily stiffened. Emily's hand instinctively moved toward her holster. "Excuse me?" Vincent's smile never wavered. "That dog, he's seen things, hasn't he? Led you straight to a crime scene. That's interesting." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Why do you care?" Vincent took a slow step forward. "Because this case is bigger than you realize, and if you keep digging, you might not like what you find." It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. He exchanged a glance with Emily. Vincent took another step forward. "Hand over the dog." Daniel's fingers twitched near his holster, and then the dog growled, a deep, low, threatening sound. Vincent's eyes darkened slightly. "Ah, smart animal." Daniel squared his shoulders. "Sorry, but this dog isn't going anywhere." Vincent sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that." He stepped back, snapped his fingers. From inside the black car, two more men in suits stepped out. Their movements were too precise, too controlled. Not just FBI. Emily's pulse raced. "Daniel, this doesn't feel right." Daniel's gut screamed at him. Vincent gave one last, almost bored look. "Have it your way, officers," he said. Then, with a final glance at the dog, he stepped into the car. The vehicle drove off into the night. But Daniel knew. This wasn't over, not even close. As soon as the car disappeared, Daniel turned to Emily. "Get the dog in my car. Now." Emily nodded, scooping the injured animal into her arms. Daniel grabbed his phone, dialing secure contact. If the FBI, or whoever they really were, wanted this dog so badly, it meant they were sitting on something huge, and there was only one way to find out. As Emily placed the dog into the passenger seat, she looked up at Daniel. "What's the plan?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "We don't go to the station. We don't trust anyone." Emily swallowed. "Then where?" Daniel slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel. "We find out who really runs this town." The dog whined softly, curling up on Emily's lap. Emily stroked its head. "We're in this together, buddy." Daniel's foot hit the gas. And as they disappeared into the dark, both of them knew. They weren't just up against criminals anymore. They were up against something much, much bigger. The dark highway stretched endlessly before them, the yellow lines blurring under the speed of their car. The town of Willow Creek lay behind them, swallowed by the night. Daniel kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, his mind racing. Emily sat beside him, her arms wrapped protectively around the injured dog in her lap. He was barely breathing now. Emily ran her fingers gently through the dog's fur. "He's getting weaker, Daniel." Her voice was soft, filled with worry. "We need to get him help." Daniel nodded, but didn't slow down. "I know." but we need to get somewhere safe first. After what had happened with Vincent Cole and the men in black, he knew they couldn't go back to the police station. Someone high up wanted this whole thing buried, and if they weren't careful, they'd disappear right along with it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Who is it?" Emily asked. Daniel pulled it out, glancing at the screen. Unknown number. His gut clenched. He hesitated for a second before answering. "Who is this?" A deep voice came through the speaker. Calm, precise, dangerous. "You've gone too far, Officer Carter." Daniel's grip tightened. "Who is this?" A small chuckle. "Let's just say I'm someone who appreciates order. And you're disrupting it." Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "You mean exposing a human trafficking ring? That's what you call disrupting order?" The voice sighed. "You don't understand the bigger picture. Some things are meant to stay in the shadows. You were given a chance to walk away." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Not happening." A pause. Then, in a voice so quiet it made the hair on his arms rise, the man said, "You won't live to regret that." Click. The line went dead. Daniel cursed under his breath and threw the phone onto the dashboard. Emily's face was pale. "Daniel, they're watching us." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Let them!" They drove for another 15 minutes before Daniel pulled into a small roadside motel, far from town. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting a red glow over the empty parking lot. Emily looked at him. "Are you sure about this?" "It's off the grid," Daniel said. "We can figure out our next move without anyone tracking us." She nodded and carefully lifted the dog. He whimpered but didn't resist. As they stepped inside, the motel clerk, a grumpy old man with a cigarette hanging from his lips, barely looked up. "Cash only." Daniel threw down a few bills. "We were never here." The clerk smirked. "Got it." They took a small, dimly lit room at the end of the hall. The air smelled like dust and old fabric, but it was safe. For now. Emily laid the dog gently on the bed, examining his wound. "We need to stop the bleeding." Daniel grabbed the first aid kit from the bathroom. He handed her some bandages while he soaked a towel in warm water. The dog whined, his dark eyes full of trust. Emily bit her lip, tears brimming in her eyes. "He saved our lives, Daniel. He took a bullet for us." Daniel swallowed hard. "Yeah, and we're going to make sure it wasn't for nothing." As Emily cleaned the wound, Daniel sat at the motel's small desk, flipping through the stolen case files they had managed to grab before the explosion. He stopped at one name, Isabella Ramirez, the little girl who had disappeared 3 months ago. There was a scribbled note on the file, one they hadn't noticed before. "Transfer to Site B1115. Daniel's blood ran cold. He checked his watch. It was November 14th. Emily noticed the shift in his expression. "What is it?" Daniel turned to her. "There's another location. They're moving the kids tomorrow." Emily's eyes widened. "We have to stop them." Daniel nodded. "But we need backup. Someone we can trust." Emily hesitated. "Who?" Daniel picked up his phone. There was only one person left, the press. An hour later, they met with Rachel Maddox, an investigative journalist Daniel had worked with once before. She was ruthless with the truth and didn't scare easily. Rachel sat across from them in a small diner, her fingers tapping impatiently against her coffee cup. "You better not be wasting my time, Carter." Daniel slid the files across the table. "We have proof that there's a human trafficking ring operating in Willow Creek." Rachel glanced at the documents, then back at him. "You do realize if this is real, you're both walking targets, right?" Emily leaned forward. "We know, but if we don't move now, they'll relocate the kids by tomorrow. We need this out in the open before they can cover it up." Rachel studied their faces, then exhaled. "All right, I'll run the story, but you better have something solid or they'll kill this before it even airs." Daniel nodded. "We'll get it," Rachel smirked. "Then you better get moving." By the time midnight rolled around, the news had already started circulating. The headline, "Police officers uncover missing children in secret trafficking ring." With the public's eyes now watching, there was no way for the criminals to move without attention. Daniel and Emily, armed and ready, met with a small team of trusted officers outside the second location, an old shipping warehouse by the river. The dog, bandaged but alert, stood beside them. Daniel patted his head. "Ready, buddy?" The dog wagged his tail. Daniel gave the order. "Go!" The team stormed the warehouse. Gunshots rang out as criminals tried to escape, but this time there was nowhere to run. Daniel and Emily burst into a locked back room, their guns raised, and there, huddled in the corner, were 6 missing children. Emily's voice cracked. We found them. Little Isabella looked up, her big, terrified eyes locking onto them. Emily lowered her gun and rushed forward. It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. Tears spilled down Isabella's face as she clung to Emily. Daniel looked at the dog, who stood near the door, watching. His eyes so knowing, so full of purpose. As if to say, this is what I brought you here for. Hours later, the criminals were arrested, the children were safe, and the story had broken nationwide. Daniel sat on the steps of the police station, staring at the sunrise. The dog lay beside him, his head resting on Daniel's boot. Emily walked over, soft smile on her face. Guess what? Daniel glanced up. What? Emily knelt, scratching the dog's ears. Isabella told me something. Daniel raised an eyebrow. She said she remembers seeing this dog at the first house, before she was taken. Emily's eyes shone with wonder. It's like he was watching, waiting, protecting them. Daniel looked down at the dog, his chest tightening. Maybe he wasn't just some stray. Maybe he was meant to be here.
Daniel reached down, stroking his fur. Looks like we found ourselves a partner. The dog wagged his tail. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel smiled.